Welcome to another episode. My name is Jose Najarro, and today we're going to do a quick video on Apple stock. We got some news today that their revenue, their forecast for the next quarter is going to be lower than anticipated due to the coronavirus. So we're going to take a look at some of the articles that came out today and see what's going on. So let's get started. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I've been away for the past 2 weeks. I've been on travel, but I'm back on my A game. I'm going to start posting videos like no tomorrow. I'm going to do the Apple video today. Then I'm also going to try to do a Uber and an esports video by the end of today. So I hope you guys enjoy it. So Apple is down a little bit less than 2%, about 1.83%. And the main reason the stock is down is that Apple earlier today, I don't know if it was earlier this morning or later last night, said that they're not going to hit the revenue forecast that they were expected for this upcoming quarter due to the coronavirus. So I decided to take a look at some of the articles to see what was going on. And one thing I also wanted to do was I wanted to see what were some of the suppliers that deal with Apple, because Apple as a whole is a huge company, right? It's a trillion, 1.4 trillion dollar company. But it does have suppliers that provide a lot of its products to make the iPhones. So those companies are also going to be hit hard. We're going to see here that there's some companies here that depend. For example, here we're going to see Qorvo. 30% of Qorvo's revenue comes from Apple. So if Apple is going to do less money, it's going to do a less revenue this quarter due to the coronavirus, we're going to expect these other companies to also have some similar downfall, maybe even worse, because they depend on Apple so much. So the first one here, we're taking a look at CNBC article. They start off saying that shares of Qorvo, a radio frequency chip supplier, fell 2.6% on Tuesday, and they are estimated to make 30% of their revenue comes from Apple. So we can see a huge portion of this. So one thing that maybe right now the market might not be overreacting or it might not be underreacting, but these might be companies that we want to keep an eye out in the future to see if they keep going down. So here again in the same article, they mentioned that Qorvo is the radio frequency chip supplier for Apple, and it fell about 2.6% on Tuesday. And credit to Susie estimates 30% of the revenue, like I mentioned, comes from Apple. We also have another chip company called Skyworks Solutions, with about 50% of their sales come from Apple, and that only fell 1.9%. So, like I said, maybe if things start to get worse with this coronavirus, we might expect these companies to fall even further due to a slower down in the iPhone sales. We also have Lam Research, which went down about 4.1%, and I'll get the tickers of those in a bit, just if you guys want to take a look at them. We have other chip suppliers, Broadcom, Micron, and Intel are all down today. About 20% of Broadcom's revenue comes from Apple. That I did not know. Broadcom is a huge company, but that's pretty crazy that 20% of revenue comes from Apple. 5% of Micron's revenue comes from Apple, and same with Intel. 5% of Intel's revenue comes from Apple. So that's why we will see a trickling effect happening with all these other companies. And then you also see some of the other semiconductors companies, Nvidia, Xilinx, both drop again as well due to these news. So Apple previously forecasted a revenue of $63 to $67 billion for the second quarter of this year. But they did say they're not going to hit revenue. But at the moment, they have not given any new guidance of what the actual value is to expect. So right now, we're still estimating of what the actual effect of this coronavirus is going to be for this company. So that's all I got from the CNBC article, but there are other articles that I wanted to take a look at. This comes from Reuters, and here coronavirus threatens Apple supply chain sales, shares drops. In late January, like I mentioned earlier before, right? In late January, Apple forecasted 63 to 67 billion in revenues. They did not give a new guidance, but here we have venture capital firm Loop Ventures, and they have some estimates, and they say that the new revenue will be somewhere between 58 billion to $60 billion. $6 billion lost in revenue, $7 billion, right? From 67 high to now they're saying a high of 60 billion. But these are just estimates from some firm. It's not going to be. It should not. We should take it as a grain of salt. We should wait until Apple really releases what the true new revenue forecast will be. But that's gonna obviously gonna be later. The main reason that this is happening is manufacturing plants in China that produce Apple's iPhones and other electronics have begun to reopen. So, like most of you know, right, due to coronavirus, most of these facilities shut down. They have begun to reopen, but they are ramping up more slowly than expected. Here we have some Cohen analyst estimates say that right now the primary manufacturing facilities are only operating at 25% of their normal operations. But again, these are not true facts. These just come from analysts, and this is what they estimate. But if 25% of the factory is being utilized right now, plus the few weeks that we've had them not working for some time, we can see why this is going to affect Apple's revenue. But remember, I mentioned I think one of the most important things to know here is to try to look at the company suppliers, because those are the ones, especially the ones that depend on Apple very heavily. Those are the ones that are going to get hit the hardest. So then we have this article from 2018. Again, these are just all articles, but I really wanted to see what some of the suppliers of Apple were and how much they affect the company, or how much Apple's supply would affect these companies. So here, this article was in late 2018, so it's about a year and some months old. But they mentioned the three companies that some of the companies we actually mentioned before. They mentioned Skyworks Solution, which we talked about in our I think we mentioned in a CNBC article, but that's ticker SWKS, and they're the ones that provide chips that enable internet and network connectivity to their phone. This company has a huge portion of the company's revenue coming into there. So SWKS, let's take a look if it actually has gone down. And yes, this one was one of them that dropped about 1.87% right now. Then the Motley Fool also has MU, which we talked about, Micron Technologies. And then they have ON Semiconductors. So they make the power management and sensor chips. And it's on Apple's official suppliers list. So let's take a look at ON Semiconductor. They're down about 1.5%. So all these companies are down. So they're not down that much compared. Let's take a look. If we take a look at 6 months, ON is actually down pretty good, a pretty nice amount. So maybe some of these have already taken a hit thinking about the coronavirus in advance. But we can see it might be okay to start doing some research on some of these companies and see if it might be a time to start opening a small position in some of these. Next, you can actually go on Apple and just put suppliers list. And here you can actually see all the companies they mentioned, where what's the supplier name of the company. Some of these are duplicates, like 3M, MMM ticker is a huge, is a supplier. We see Advanced Semiconductor. So here they have a list of all the companies. So if you guys really want to take a look, definitely go through this list and see what it is. Unfortunately, the bad thing is we can't really see how much of total revenue is reflected on Apple. That's something that you would have to just Google and see. Here on MondayMorning.com, if you type Monday Morning and put the 2018 Apple suppliers list, they actually have a great list, the list that I just showed you before. Here they actually have all the tickers for them already. So if you actually want to just go through these lists, they have a huge number of lists, and all the public companies have their ticker. So if you guys want to take a look and see what they provide to Apple, that's definitely a pretty cool idea to go about if you have time to go read. All right, so the next article I want to talk about comes from Market Realist. So here, this article is about a quarter old, maybe two. It released in September 10th, 2019. And they talked again about some of the suppliers that this company has, Apple has. And here I highlighted the most important ones. We have Skyrocket, SWKS, which we talked about in this video. We have Qorvo, again, another one we talked about. And we have Cirrus Logic, ticker CRUS. And these three chip companies are very sensitive to Apple because on September 2019, 45% of Skyrocket's revenue comes from Apple. 35% of Qorvo's revenue comes from Apple. and about 80% of series revenue comes from Apple. So you can see how these companies really affect. So let's take actually a look at these three companies. I think we took a look at some of them, but SWKS stock was down 1.8%. But let's take a look at the 1 year. Let's take a look at the 6 months. Not much change from its all-time highs right now. It's only 9% down from its all-time high. Then let's take a look at the next one. The next one is Curvo. So Curvo stock price right now is 103. If we take a look at the 1 year, it's about 13% off from its all-time highs. But again, it's still, look at this, it's still pretty above its normal price. So not much has taken effect, but we can see it is down. And finally, the last one is Series, that takes a huge portion of revenue from Apple. This one's down the most compared to all the other ones, which were down about 1.8%. This one's actually down 3.1%. But if we take a look at its all-time high, it's only down about 8.8%. So we can see these companies are still pretty strong. They're still way above, which seems to be their average price. And they have taken a hit due to these news. But maybe as things could get worse, these are some companies that maybe will have a bigger impact due to Apple's lower revenue. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Don't forget, make sure to post on the comments. Let me know if you guys are opening positions in any of these companies, or if you guys are just putting them on your watch list. So take care, guys. Have a good night, and make sure to check out the other videos. I think I might do ATVI next, followed by Lyft or Uber by the end of today. So take care, guys, and bye.